Good morning. I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you very much, Sven, for this kind invitation. It is a pleasure to be here. First of all, I have fond memories of Bonn. I did the practical here when I was still studying. And second, it will be actually a trip a bit through memory lane, because many of the things I'm talking about have been looked at in the simulation league for a long time. And the multi-agent aspects, many questions are still open. Some things have become clearer. I'd like to make a point of that by far not all questions have been answered. Much is essentially still ongoing work, but the things that I would like to make a talk where you can have a feeling, okay, some of the problems actually have been addressed and solved. By the way, if you don't know how to pronounce that, just sneeze. Hertfordshire is pronounced Hertfordshire. Okay? So if you don't know how to pronounce it, that's the closest way to do it. And I need to thank a lot of people. I would like to thank, of course, my team in Mainz when I started in '98. In fact, as you see, this team was really huge. And really all these people worked on the project. And we actually did the fact that we split the team and we had two competing designs, and then we picked the better designs for the competition team. So that was quite large. Then I had some useful hints on newer developments of the 2D League, which I'm not participating in already for quite a few years. 2004 was my last participation in the 2D League. And then we moved to the 3D League, and the gliders, the team gliders from Australia, Mikhail and Oliver, gave me some hints. Oliver and Mikhail are very long-term RoboCuppers too, and of course my current team. I would like to thank specifically Sander and Drew. Anyway, so let me start very basically, and I'm now going a step back from RoboCup. I'm trying to think generally, what is an agent? I think it's a valuable exercise to do this type of philosophical thought. So think of it as an agent, and these arrows actually correspond to a Bayesian network. But for now, just take them intuitively. There's a world, there's a sensor, there's a machine, memory, call it what you like. It processes, it carries out an action, and it affects the world. And then the next time step, again, you sense, you think, you act, and you affect the world. And so on and so on. So that goes on forever. So that is kind of an agent. Well, there's one agent and one world. And in fact, you will notice one interesting thing. This little diagram is actually symmetric. Okay? It's symmetric over the partition between the agent and the world. So, unless I tell you something special, you have no idea which of the sides should be the world and which should be the agent. So this is actually an interesting problem. I don't go into details in that, but what is the difference between an agent and the world? The main difference is the world has a fixed physics. It's clear what happens when you do something and reacts in a fixed way, more or less, according to the laws of physics. An agent, however, is reprogrammable. So these arrows can be essentially reprogrammed in any arbitrary fashion. Let's say this arrow is Turing complete. So you can learn, you can modify. And in fact, this seems to be a quite deep question, because if people look at the questions of origins of life, then the question is, when do you speak about a living organism? And that is the moment, basically, when the organism has some degree of freedom that it can affect the world with. This is something we will return later also in the RoboCup context. What is an agent? When do you consider something to be an agent? Now, if we say we have a multi-agent system, then you see that it becomes more interesting. You have here an agent. This is our friend from the last slide. But there's a mirror image, you know, like Superman. There's a bad Superman on the other side. And that is the other agent. And you see it's essentially sensor, memory, actuator, and so on the other side. This agent has, of course, another internal structure. And it's clear that for this agent here, the world is not physical anymore, but it has some intrinsic, more problematic, more complex behavior. What it is, of course, we don't know, and that can be actually a difficult thing to find out. Yeah? So this is a two-agent system, and of course you can make it a multi-agent system. I refrain from plotting that. It will not become clearer by plotting more than two agents. So, let me summarize. We have a purely passive world. A purely passive world has dynamics that is fixed, that you can learn, and then you know it. And basically, we can say it reacts to agent actions. So you do, I kick the ball, it moves. I push an object, it changes position. I can have a world in which there's an active agent. And strictly spoken, a world with agent has an intrinsic dynamics which I do not fully know. Not only do I not fully know it, but it has some other properties which we'll discuss a bit more in detail. And the point is that it looks like it's dictated by a purpose. Doesn't mean it has a purpose, you know. There are these days where everything doesn't work. Yeah, your things fall apart, your mobile crashes, your computer crashes, your trouser rips, whatever, and then you think something dictates by purpose, perhaps. What's more likely, it's just bad luck. Well, we'll find out. Purpose is actually one thing by which you can try to identify whether there is an agent there. So let's have a look at this. Who knows Braitenberg vehicles? Few. Okay. A Braitenberg vehicle, I will tell you in a second how they look inside. But this is a Braitenberg vehicle. When I was a kid, I built something like that. Didn't work that well, but it worked somehow, more or less. So there's two engines, one engine here, one engine there. And there are two photoreceptive sensors. Okay? So I put this vehicle somewhere in the world, and I put some lamp there. And these things are sensitive to the lamp. And it runs away from the lamp. Whoa! It looks like it's afraid of the lamp. This guy, however, sees the lamp and starts running towards it like crazy. Loves lamps. Loves light. Okay? So these are the two Braitenbergs, and they look like they have purposeful behavior. One is afraid of lamps, and the other one wants lamps. Or hates them, attacks them, I don't know. Call them whatever you like. How do they look internally? If we open them, turns out this agent has the following construction. This photoreceptive sensor is connected to the left and to the right wheel, and the other one to the left one. So what happens is, if that gets more signal than the upper one, so the lamp is here, this gets more light than the other one, then this motor gets more electricity than the upper one, so the agent goes to the left and runs away. To go towards the lamp, we cross the two wires. Basically, if the lamp is here, then this photoreceptive sensors makes this go faster, and this is a bit less fast. So in other words, the agent goes towards the lamp. This is what happens inside. And Braitenberg says, look, it looks like it's purposeful, but it's not. It has a very simple structure. So why is it that we think it's purposeful? The reason for that is that we, from an evolutionary point of view, do not care how it looks inside. We assume that if it does something like that, it has a purpose, and we don't care that it's very simple to achieve it, but it has a purpose to go somewhere or to run away. So why I'm saying that is that purpose may not be reflected in the complexity of your wires. It may be reflected in the complexity of your evolution. How you got to that point. Okay? But the other point is, that I want to make clear here, that purpose, of course, is something that appears. It's not necessarily there. We don't know. So the message is that passive objects and agents are not always distinguishable. In the Braitenberg case, it's not clear to say, is this an agent or is it just some object that has a reaction? It's very difficult to distinguish. But there's another aspect where you can't always distinguish it. Say you go and dive, there are a stonefish, dragonfish. These fish look like stones. In other words, you don't see them. So I have been snorkeling in the Red Sea once, and there was this fish there, but I didn't see it. I was swimming and suddenly I saw a mouth line. I thought, where's the mouth line? It must be eyes. And then I found one eye. Then I looked further, I found the other eye. And then suddenly I saw the whole fish. Very difficult to see. And the point is, it's very dangerous fish, and you don't want to tease them with your finger because it will just eat it. Okay? So the point is, camouflage is actually a case where an agent appears or tries to appear as if it's not there. Sometimes, however, it's not camouflage, it's just lack of ability. I'll give you an example, which is RoboCup in a second. So this case here is do not attribute to malice what is equally explained by incompetence. There's a famous case about the guy coming to an office in Beamter. Beamter is a civil servant in Germany, and there was a spider web between the civil servant and the wall. Okay? So this guy did not move. Not necessarily because of camouflage. Anyway, so the Pizza Tower lesson is the following. The Pizza Tower was a team that participated in the 2D League in, I think it was in 1999 in Stockholm. And the point of the team was that they had a problem with the synchronization with the server. So their agents were standing around all the time and rotating, trying to look around, but they could not move. Now many teams actually thought they are opponents, so went around them very carefully, because they thought they would start moving at every moment. But they didn't. So people scored 3-0 against 4-0 against a team that didn't move. Just because they took into account these guys will move and they are going to trap us. Well, my old team, mine's Rolling Brains, was a little bit more primitive. It just didn't care. They are there or they're not, just rush for the ball and shoot. And they did, I don't know, 20, 25 goals. Not because we were so competent, but because they just didn't care. Okay? So sometimes incompetence can be a boon, and sometimes, yeah, it looks like malice, but it's not. So the Pizza Tower lesson is, are those agents standing around waiting to spring a trap? Are they going to attack us when we are not careful, or they're just lost? They were just lost. Yeah? But this is what I want you to keep in mind. What an agent does is not obviously, it's not always clear. Intention extraction is some of the most difficult things. Yeah, even in robots. Okay, if you have now a world with another active agent, and you know there's another active agent, then, as we say, it looks like it's dictated by purpose. But that purpose, this world has a purpose. For example, if you have this bad day where everything goes wrong, then you think somebody has a purpose to damage you. The old Greeks believed in that. They really believed the gods like to play games with them. And that may be, now the point is the gods or the other agent or whatever, the world around you, the agency world around you, may or may not be consistent with your purpose. Okay? We assume that you have a purpose. I'm not going to discuss that. It's all obvious. You can put utility or some other type of purpose. Scoring goals. And this makes the things interesting. So how do we know whether the world is with us or against us? So we can use Goldfinger's motto. Goldfinger's motto, if you haven't heard it, I think it's actually a nice motto. Once is happenstance. Twice is bad luck. 3 times is enemy action. Okay? So that's basically how you can judge. Yeah, it didn't work once, fine. But enemy action means somebody wants to actually act against you. There's also a nice motto by Stalin, who of course has to be quoted in the set of bad guys. Who speaks Russian here? Yes? Есть человек, есть проблема. Нет человека, нет проблема.
I'm sending back people with having a problem with this way. When they learn Russian.
Okay, perhaps one can guess.
Shall we get started?
Есть человек, есть проблема.
If people,
Hmm?
if people have problems.
There is a person.
If people have problems, no people, no problems.
Bingo. So there is a person, there is a problem. There you go. So this guy clearly had the ultimate understanding of antagonism. Okay? So basically he says you remove the problem by removing the person. Which you cannot do, say in RoboCup. You can't just shoot down your opponent player. In real football you actually can. Just kick in the right spot. Right? And in such a way that the referee doesn't see it. Yeah? I mean, if the referee sees it doesn't work. And, yeah, so that's one thing. But the whole point is here actually to understand, is there actually an antagonist there? And if we talk about Stalin, he saw antagonists where they were. In the 50s there were lots of explosions on flying fields in Siberia. And these explosions were thought to be sabotage, so the people were shot, the ground troops were shot, put on the wall and shot. And that happened several times until they started running out of ground crews. And it turned out that nobody sabotaged there. There was just an explosion because of the fuel, of the gasoline. When you were fueling them, there was an electrostatic discharge. And so there was no antagonism there. It was read into it. And well, finally, Kafka, of course, who is also an expert in paranoid on the other side, the fact that you're paranoid does not mean they are not after you. Okay, so let's go a bit more formal. Enough fun. If we talk about an agent, we say a single entity that controls decision. It's a single mind that plays an interesting role. A single goal. The external world can be noisy, and the question is, how do we challenge with the external world in an optimal way? When we transit, yes.
Okay. How do you define mind?
Controller.
Okay.
Yeah, but it will be probably clearer what I mean. Why I'm saying a single mind as opposed to multiple minds. Because if you have a team, you have multiple controllers. And when you have multiple controllers, decision making is more difficult.
Right.
Yeah, even if you have a shared goal. So we have interests in agents, we have shared goals, and we have antagonisms. Now the interesting point is, when you have multiple agents, they can be consistent or conflicting agenda. It's not the same thing. Inconsistent means, I don't care what your agenda is. Conflicting means, if I get my agenda, you don't get yours. These are different things. But you can also have a consistent agenda with multiple brains. And if you have crisscross interaction, it gets really complicated. And we are going to look at, and want to classify that briefly before we go to the RoboCup scenarios. And the reason I want to do that is because the real world is more complicated than the RoboCup in terms of multi-agentage. So we have single agent systems. That's the easy one. There's one brain thinking, hovering over the waters, thinking, making decisions, and seeing what happens. Classical optimization, classical dynamic programming, if you like. Two agents, of course. Multi-agent. You have cooperation, you have antagonism, and you have something in between. That's real life. Real life is very much in between. You don't necessarily make somebody lose by winning, but it's not clear that you should cooperate. Okay? It's very complicated, much more complicated. I would like also to emphasize that even if you take a relatively simple case of one-winner systems, once you have multi-agent systems, you can produce intricate strategy balances. So for example, there are games where everybody fights against everybody else. So it's only one winner at the end. And if you have 4 players, they live in a world where they're lined up in a line. So 1, 2, 3, 4. They will kill off each other till one survives. Question, who will fight whom? These two will fight, and these two will fight, and those in the middle will keep peace. They will fight, they will not fight each other until they have beaten their neighbor. The reason is very simple. Everything else is an advantage for the neighbor. Yeah, if they start fighting in the middle, the ones on the outside will win. No question. So the ones in the middle will keep peace. Oh, they're not allied. They're not allied, they're enemies. But they will not touch each other until they finish their neighbors. And the reason for that is just the dynamic of the game. Yeah, it's the best strategy, because otherwise they don't have a chance to survive. So temporarily they are allies. Absurd but true. Okay, so there's a rich set of strategies, and I want to give you an example for one case, and I'm lucky that you can actually see that. This is an old competition we used to do in Mainz, based on a simulator called X-Raptor. And that gives you an idea how complex multi-agent strategies are. The scenario is very similar actually to Google AI, to the Google AI challenge from 2011. It's an ant colony scenario. We did it actually in '97 for the first time. And the way it works is the following. There are 2 types of agents. There are queens, they are a bit bigger, and there are normal ants. The normal ants can run very fast, they can find food, they can push it to the queen, or they can eat it and spit it to the queen. Or the queens can move very slowly, but they can give birth to children if they have enough high energy level. That's all. That's everything. Now, this looks very simple, but in fact, it turns out you have a huge set of strategies you can put, and then you plug in all these ant colonies in one world, and then you have 5 different strategies. For example, these guys, as you see them, their ants are gangs. They form gangs and they run to other colonies and try to kill them very aggressively. Turns out this team performed very badly. So the pure brutal team did not perform very well. This was a fascinating team. It's a bit hard to see, but if you watch closely, these ants are actually all pushing the food to the queen. A very good logistics. So they run around and then push the food to the queen because that's the most effective way to get food there, but they're very peaceful. Turned out that in the intermediate competition they did quite well. Yeah, they grew very, very fast, but in the final competition, actually they were killed off. Not that fast because they have good food, but they were killed off because they were not aggressive enough. These black guys are the pirates. Yeah, so you can vote for them. They're just kidding. What they did basically, they wanted to keep others from getting into their territory. So they ate everything that was around it and kept basically scorched earth. Destroyed everything around it so they would not, the others would not come in. And that was quite interesting. Then there was a team that mapped out the whole area. And the winner was this team, actually. They won most of the competitions. We call them a bit like Microsoft, because what they did was grow, feed the queen, they ate everything around it, and when they felt strong enough, they started bullying the others. But only when they felt strong enough. Okay? They did not start bullying right away like these. They started bullying only after some time, and then an ant basically said, oh, I feel strong, went back to its friends, called some up, say, let's go kill some other ants. They went with a small group, killed some, returned, had food, had the queen, and so on. And it grew basically over the whole field. So they had the best chance of winning. Why I'm mentioning that? Because this one is a nice example how a very simple dynamics gives rise to enormous richness of strategies. And we had basically 7 teams and 7 different strategies. There was no repeat. The other reason why I'm mentioning that, of course, that this was the reason why we participated in RoboCup, because the students then heard about RoboCup and thought, well, we should do that. We know how to do multi-agent systems. Well, that's how it started. So let me mention one thing. RoboCup as a multi-agent system is a relatively simple case. Because we have clear cooperation and clear antagonism, there's only one opponent. And you know who you collaborate with, and you know who you fight. And we are going now to visit the different levels of multi-agenthood, and I'm going to start with behavior analysis. So, before we talk about multi-agents, let's talk about what a single agent is doing, and let's talk about how to find out what it's doing. So, what we are going to look at is at the behavior of what an agent in RoboCup is doing and how you can find out without knowing what's going inside the agent. Okay? There are lots of studies about that. I'm going to pick one very specific, relatively simple study where we do an automated analysis, and it's purely behavior-based, so we have no assumptions about what's going on inside, we just observe. And we are going to look at micro-behavior of a single player and player-ball interaction. The trick we are going to use here, this is actually a dated technology by now, but at that time it was pretty much at the height of things, is a self-organizing map. Do you know what a self-organizing map is? Yeah, a self-organizing map is essentially, you can imagine, a kind of 2D representation of a high-dimensional data space. That's what it is, and you can visualize. You can project down this high-dimensional data space onto this 2D scenario. You can do clustering, and it's topology preserving. So nearby points, it will try to map nearby points in the high-dimensional space to nearby points on the 2D surface, more or less. And what we are going to do here is actually detecting sequences of positions, of moves, and sequences of all player interactions. So more concretely, in the self-organizing map, you assume that your data live in a vector space. That was, of course, not always true. This can be generalized. And you assume also that there's a matrix, there's a distance in the set, which is, in our case, will be just Euclidean distance. So we are going to transform a trajectory of a player moving around in the world, into a vector representation, which will be projected down to this two-dimensional surface. And because the space of complete trajectories is far too large and will be just so sparse that you wouldn't see anything, we're going just to look at trajectory slices. We're going to take a trajectory of a player throughout the game and cut it into small slices of 4, 5, 6 steps length and project them down into a sequence of positions. So this is, for example, a player. It moves up and down and up and so on. This is a two-dimensional sequence of two-dimensional vectors. And we're now looking only at the changes to make it translation invariant. We're looking only at the shifts of the positions. So our vector looks like that: ut minus 1, ut plus 1, t is time for several positions. And we take one player, so to be consistent over the game, it's better to pick up one player, otherwise you get a mix up of different types. And we just use the Euclidean distance as a metric. And this is what you get. This is just an overview. I will go through 2 or 3 trajectories later. We trained it at that time with the mind-rolling brains. That was my old team, 99, and the Carnegie Mellon, Peter Stone, Manuela's team. And both teams were trained for this map. So we used the training data from 2 players. And we got the following classification types. So this is how the map looked like. And we could, by hand, distinguish different regions which had different meanings. So, for example, region 3. This is this region here, which is really well occupied by CMU, but it's hardly occupied by us. Is basically a move where the player moves from its original position to the right by a short, like that. Yeah, so it watches the other goal, it moves to the right, not too far. Yeah, makes a small move to the right. Another example is area 2, where it moves slightly to the front. A short move, it's not a big move, just moves a little bit to the front. While, for example, number 6 is more occupied by MRB. MRB obviously makes 2 big moves. It makes this really long move ahead and wastes a lot of stamina this way. So this is one thing that you can immediately see. But more interesting is actually the relation to the ball. So you can look at the sequence of positions of the player versus what the ball is doing. So the ball is moving, has also move differences, and you can combine them into a combined vector. And when you do that, you can see how the players actually interact with the ball. You can analyze that again. You get the following diagram, and this is actually quite interesting because you see the diagram that you get for mind-scrolling brains and the one for your CMU, they look very different. Let me start with things. Yeah, I think I just look for the most obvious area. The most obvious area is this big plus sign in the middle, which is really well occupied by CMU and really badly occupied by mind-scrolling brains. This corresponds to that diagram. The red line is the ball, the blue is the player. So what this one is doing is the player dribbling with the ball, which CMU at that time did very, very well. Yeah, they have really good control over the ball, what they're doing with the ball. If you compare that, for example, with area, I'm trying to find it, where's area 7? Ah, there it is. This is area 7. Area 7, CMU is practically not represented here, but mind-scrolling brain is. And what did mind-scrolling brain do? This is this area there. You see the blue and the red, basically one behind the other. So what Mainz was doing, and we knew that this is correct, that's exactly what we did. It took the ball in front, kicked it, ran after it, kicked it, ran after it, kicked it, ran after it. Which is a form of dribbling, but it was less effective than CMU's. Okay? The interesting point is, this one, we cannot test whether they actually do that. We can just infer from the behavior. But in number 7, we know that we did that. That was actually what we coded. Because we were not able, at that time, to do a proper dribbling on the side. Okay? So in other words, this behavior analysis can give you some revealing features about what's going on actually inside the players without actually opening them up and knowing what's going inside. That's why I'm showing it. Although it's just one player we are looking at, it is interesting because it shows that behaviorism can give you some valuable information. Okay? There are other behaviors like kicking to the right and so on, but these are probably the most interesting ones. Okay, this was the dribbling. And this is, for example, an example for a pass. So we see here a player running to this way and shooting the ball off to the left. So the player goes to the right. This is the home goal. The player goes back right and shoots the ball off. Okay, so I'd like to make clear everything was implicit. We did not give names to the trajectories, and we can look at the reactive analysis here. This is not strategic, it's just what happens right away in small chunks of time. But what clearly needs more doing, some people have started working on that, but it seems much more difficult than it looks like. Higher level analysis of trajectories. So what does a trajectory mean? I said it's dribbling, right? How would the system know it's dribbling? Okay? What does it mean it's dribbling? Well, dribbling means in one way that you basically move and keep control of the ball, but you pay for it by having a slow ball. Yeah, the ball is slow when you dribble. The whole point of dribbling is that you keep control for the price that you are becoming slow. While passing, you lose control, but you gain speed. Yes?
Have you compared the maps of some of the two players of the same team? So to check whether this data is consistent. Because I guess that all agents have the same behavior, at least from control view, but do they also behave then the same way?
It's a very good idea we haven't. But it's a very good idea. I suspect that there will not be much differences because the skill level, and this is basically reactive, so it's on the basic skill level, is the same. So the players are distinguished by roles, and they will do different things in defense and in offense. But still, I think the basic skills, which is what you see here, will be the same. They're not so complex. We do not have that complex behaviors yet that we can link strategic thinking to actually concrete abilities. If you look at the top teams, say in real soccer, whatever, FC Bayern now, with Guardiola, he tries to do that actually, where in principle, you look at the player, you don't know what he's going to do. You cannot predict how he's going to play. I would claim if you do the behavior analysis of a really good player, they will be very difficult to classify because they switch between offense, defense, different types of behaviors very quickly. If you look at the mediocre team or low-class team, I believe that you will find a very clear classification. Yeah? So the quality will be actually showing that you have more behaviors, more different behaviors. Okay, and the second thing is, this map did not tell you whether you are good or not. I know that CMU's dribbling was better. We know that because we saw the games. But it's not, this map does not tell you whether this behavior is good or bad. Okay, just tell you this behavior exists. So this is really a valuable area of research, and in my opinion there's not a satisfactory approach to that at this time yet. I mean, there are people who do this classification, put tags on it, but I think there's much more work to be done here. So let's move a little bit further to perception, prediction, and antagonistic action. I will start with something, but that will not take much time. When you have an agent, there's a world outside. This world is not perfectly known. And this is important. If it were perfectly known, it is a game changer. It's a game changer. It's really important that the world is not perfectly known. It really changes what you can do. There's a good reason for having the rules that a humanoid robot should have no other sensors than the human. Yeah? It should not have eyes on the back, for example, or a surround camera. There's a reason for that, because that makes things more interesting and more relevant. And this is why you need a world model. I don't have time to talk about world models too much, but in the 2D Elite, world models are very important because you have to know where the ball is, what it's doing, and in fact, when you see the ball, it's easy. You make a prediction, and as long as no other player there, you know what it's going to do. When there's another player, you know less what it's going to do, and if it's behind you, you don't know anything. But of course, as humanoids, programmers, you know that this is a problem with humanoids too, because you fall down, you lose orientation, and things like that. So, I'll skip that one. I think that's pretty obvious. You can do basically phase-based filtering. I rather move to the point where if you have an object like the ball, which is not active, the ball moves in a predictable way. So you have a model of how the ball is moving. And if the ball starts moving differently, then you have to correct your model. But the point is, as long as you know what the ball is doing, it's very easy to get a good estimate of where it's going. When it touches another player, things become problematic because, of course, the other player can mess with it. Now, the case is if it's a friendly player, the other player doesn't want to mess up your perception. It doesn't care about that. It perhaps wants even to catch the ball in such a way that you can predict it. Say if you're a defender and your goalie sends there, you as a defender, you don't want the ball to go some haywire way where your poor goalie has to guess what's going to happen. Of course, you want to make a most predictable action, an action where the goalie can catch the ball, slow it down or something like that. However, if you're antagonistic, the opposite is true. If you're antagonistic in an antagonistic relation with another player, you want the other guy not to know what's going to happen. You want to be as unpredictable as possible. And I give you a special example for that, which is a very beautiful piece of work done by Jelle Kok and team of the University of Amsterdam in 2002, which is a very simple but elegant way of computing how to optimally score a goal. Let's talk about that. It contains all ingredients relevant to the RoboCup scenario. So it's a multi-agent system. You have two agents. It has some noise, and it has several interesting elements. So basically, what they do is the following: they shoot a ball in a direction. Pop. Okay, ball goes there, and it will deviate from the straight line by a Gaussian. Forget this. This is just an artifact which I couldn't get rid of. I spent half an hour trying to get rid of this artifact. Couldn't. So basically what you get is a distribution. The ball is shot in this direction, and the further it runs, the larger this deviation of this Gaussian is. So they write a map that tells you if you shoot in a distance d, the Gaussian has this width. If d grows further, the Gaussian is bigger. So in other words, you have distribution where the ball will be at a certain distance d when you shoot it in a straight line. Okay? That's the first thing they do. Very simple. Second thing they do is the following. And that's a really neat idea. Very simple idea, but I really like it. This is the goal. Assume that the player shoots towards the center of the goal. Now the question is, what's the likelihood that he will hit the goal? We now know at a particular fixed distance how the deviation will look like. So we know that at the level where it will meet the first goalpost, this is the right goalpost, at the level where it meets this, so there's a particular distance, d1, this is the Gaussian, which has a certain width, and we know the probability that it will be left of the goalpost is given by the cumulative distribution on the left of the goalpost. That is the probability that it will go out to the left. If we look at the far goalpost, we can ask what's the probability that it goes out there. Again, the distance is now d2. This distance d2 has wider Gaussian, and the probability that it will go out to the right is given by the cumulative probability of this Gaussian, of this wider Gaussian to the right. Fair enough. So this is the probability that will go out to the left, this is the probability that will go out to the right. What remains is the probability that will enter the goal. That's how you compute. Simple and elegant. Right. So we know now what's the likelihood that we'll hit the goal if we shoot to the goal straight in the middle from an angle. Now we use a given goalkeeper. Jelle Kok used FC Portugal's goalkeeper, which at that time was considered one of the best goalkeepers of its time. And basically what you are saying now is, we do a classification problem. I don't care now for a second about the goal itself. I'm looking at different player goalie positions, relative positions, and I'm asking, does the goalie catch the ball, yes or no? Yeah, so I shoot the ball at different positions. Will the goalie catch the ball? And we record the experiment of interception. And you get basically, turns out that there are only two parameters that judge whether the goalie will catch the ball. The first parameter is the angle between the goalie and the shooting point. So the goalie is here, and I'm aiming for the goal. The goal itself, when I'm hitting the goal, I will hit the goal at a certain point if it's not disrupted. This is a shooting point. Yeah? So I'm sitting here, I'm shooting for the goal, I'm hitting the goal here, this is the shooting point. The goalie is here. So I'm interested in the angle between the goalie and the shooting point as seen from the player. Yeah? I see the angle between the goalie and the shooting point from my perspective of the player. And the second parameter is the distance between player and goalie. That's all. These two parameters are enough to get this map where one of them is interception and the other one is not. I'm not sure whether red is interception is goal or not. So one class is goal, the other class is not. So you get basically a Fisher discriminant analysis here. And what they then do is the following. They say, we project down to this surface here, project these two things. You get two classes, essentially. And now you do a Bayesian analysis. You basically ask the base, what's the likelihood that under these parameters you will actually hit score a goal. And for this purpose, it's enough to actually model the overlap area, because the other areas are clear. This is always a catch, and this always goes in, this always goes out. So in the overlap area, you can actually model them by Gaussians. And when you do that and do the Bayesian classification, you get this curve, and you can basically, given this parameter here, vertical to the Fisher discriminant line, you can basically classify whether the ball will be caught or not. And from this, of course, you can make a statement where the goalie should be. Yeah? So you get basically a statement. In this situation, what's the likelihood that you catch the ball? The question is now, where should the goalie be? And of course, you can then basically do the following thing. You have two curves. One curve is about the probability that the ball enters the goal, independent from the goalie catching it, and then the probability of the goalie catching the ball, independent of whether the ball would have gone into the goal. So you can just multiply them. So one curve is red, one is blue, and the other curve, the curve that gives you the probability of entering the goal, depending where you are, is this black curve. Here we see a case where one curve is very high, there is probability of entering the goal, but the probability of passing the goalkeeper is very low. So in this case, the goalie is positioned very well. You will basically not score a goal here. Yeah, you multiply this with this, it's very low. That's the probability of scoring. Here you multiply the red and the blue. You get this curve here, which means that you can choose your shooting point at the point where the likelihood of entering the goal is the highest. Nice and simple. Okay. Message is, you can sometimes, if you're lucky, get a pretty good model of what's going on. And this is, of course, simulation league, so you have much less noise than you have in a real robot. But still, sometimes you can structure your data quite well. Of course, this is for a particular goalie. You have a different goalie, the characteristics may be different. So, let's start moving to multi-agent strategies. I talked here about, yes?
You said that was a good example of an antagonistic system.
Yes.
I'm not understanding how that's antagonistic.
Well, you have the goalie who doesn't want the ball to enter the goal, and you have the player who tries to enter it, shoot into the goal.
Right. Okay.
That's maximum antagonistic. Yeah? Antagonistic means that if you succeed, the other one is unhappy. Okay?
Yeah.
So, for example, if you have a nice car and your neighbors don't like it. I'm just kidding. That's maximal antagonistic. Okay? Non-antagonistic behavior is, for example, buying and selling. And buying and selling is a mixture, because of course you want to make as much money as you can as a seller, and the buyer wants to pay as little as possible, but still the buyer wants to buy things, and the seller wants to sell, so it's not perfectly antagonistic there. Okay. Actually, it's more interesting, it's quite an interesting scenario, buying and selling, because it's really an interesting combination of antagonistic and cooperative.
I was expecting an interaction between sort of other players. I didn't understand it was the player-goalie relationship that was the...
Yes, the goal is your antagonistic player.
Okay.
I'm moving to more players very soon. But I want to build the case up because it's really, people think that multi-agent systems are, well, you have just this stuff and lots of going on. I want to make you understand how things scale up, what works, what doesn't work, and so on. It's really a complicated thing. Yesterday we heard that essentially all humanoid walking is essentially of the same kind, more or less. So there are some rules and everybody does that. What I'm trying to tell you today, well, nobody knows how to do multi-agent systems properly. So basically, every time you are on a trip of the discovery, and what I'm trying to give you are some things that are known, some things that are understood, and some things that are not understood, so that you can understand roughly where the boundary between the known and the unknown is. So, when we talk about multi-agent systems, then we have to understand that we have simultaneous multimodal information. It's difficult to process, it's expensive to process. You cannot watch the whole traffic when you drive. You cannot watch the whole traffic when you drive. And you cannot talk on the phone when you drive. That's the reason for it. Yeah, talk on the phone when you drive and you are, well, I remember when we were in Istanbul at RoboCup, well, the traffic was interesting. Very interesting.
That's a good word.
Yeah, yeah. We were warned to drive on our own in Istanbul. Okay? Anyway, the environment is unpredictable, but then you have unreliable message reception. So you talk to your fellow agent and say, oh, take the ball, and he didn't listen to you, or he didn't hear you, or perhaps the packet was lost, or whatever. I mean, anything can happen. Low bandwidth, right? In football, for example, you can say if you're playing a real football, the guy behind you, if he's from the same team, is allowed to say Hintermann, which means the German guy behind you. It means you can kick the ball backwards without looking. It saves you time to turn around and check that there is somebody there, right? By the way, it's a foul if you say Hintermann and you're of the opponent team. It's considered foul. Okay? It's not just ungentlemanly behavior, it's a foul in real game. You just don't do that. Anyway, then certainly perceived world information may lead to conflicting and inconsistent behaviors even amongst friendly players. Yeah? So friendly players, I mean the classic example is friendly fire. Well, friendly fire isn't. Friendly fire isn't friendly, right? These are your guys shooting your back. Not good. Yeah, but it's because inconsistent behavior. Right. So, concrete problems, and I'm giving here a list that actually has been put out by Almeida et al. In 2010. So, where, when, and how to use vision. Whom to listen to, right? You don't want to listen to everybody. The question is, who do you pay attention to? How to estimate information of others if you can. What, when, and how to exchange information and how to use it. You see, if you listen to everybody who talks to you on Facebook, you are lost. Okay? It's not a good way of doing something with information. But the most important thing at the end of the day is action. What action of the player is best for the team, not for the player, right? It's not about showing off, it's about making the team work. Of course, fortunately, RoboCup robots don't have ego yet. With an emphasis on yet. Okay? That may change in the future, but right now we don't have it. Then pass versus dribble. I already gave you an idea when is a pass better, when is a dribble better. Many teams you like to use dribble, and particularly, for example, all successful teams in the 3D Humanoid League this year still do a lot of dribbling. A lot of dribbling. Basically, Austin Villa, the winner, which won several competitions, basically dribble the ball to the goal. It's frustrating, yes. We have to battle that. We have to stop that from succeeding. But it's clearly such a big advantage to dribble. It's a dominant strategy right now. Well, how do you execute an elementary or compound action? In fact, there are lots of models how to do that. But in my opinion, the problem is not really satisfactorily solved. Because we humans do cluster together useful action sequences in a natural way. But in robots, we still have to do it by hand. I mean, there's some learning going on. Martin Riedenmiller's group had some fantastic learning work, reinforcement learning work, but this question is still, in my opinion, not satisfactorily solved, and no two people, no two teams use the same way of doing it. That is, to me, the indicator that the problem is not understood. Yeah, if every team does something else, that's a sign that either there's no clear way of doing it, or there's no good understanding of what's essential. So let's look at different types of coordination. I'm going a little bit of theory here, just to give you an overview. We'll come to more concrete statements in a second. So you have different types of coordination. The simplest one is ball-centered. It's easy to achieve, you get quick results fast. So you react, ball velocity changes. So the ball has to be kicked, the ball has changed velocity, okay, something has happened, watch. What's happening now? That's easy. And in fact, if you write your own first team, go for it. That's the first thing you should do. Don't worry about anything else. That's the most important thing to do. It's short time scale, yeah? So ball-centered is the individual can make it the decision, and the decision is very short. It happens in 1-2 seconds, you know what's happening. Active is also very useful. Why is it useful? Because you can still do it on an individual or collective level as you like, and it gives you strategic advantage, and a few teams actually do that. What do I want to happen? Yeah, so I'm looking forward. What's the next thing I want to happen? I want the ball to be there. I want the ball to be at my partner. That's a very useful thing to do because it gives you just enough prediction to make a little bit of planning, not too much, not complex, not strategic planning, so that you can actually get some advantage from that. Strategic is a different story. Strategic means you're looking for an open spatial pass, and that is dark art. So basically what you do is, on a full moon's night, you go up a mountain, you sacrifice a goat, sacrifice a chicken, do things like that, and then you kind of find the right parameters of how to do that. Unfortunately, much of it is still the case. It's still the case. I won't pretend it's not. Much of it is actually hand-coded. Of course, you can learn some things and see which passes work, but still you have to reconstruct what are the combinations that will work for you. I should also mention that Peter Stone early on had this really nice view of locker room agreements. What is a locker room agreement? It's an agreement that you do apart from the field. It's something that you do before the game. When you're not winning the game, you can't change that anymore. Yeah, it's something that everybody agrees on. Like, we are going to have a strong central defense, or we are going to have a strong central attack, or we're going to attack from the left flank or from the right flank, or something like that. This is something that can be done ahead of time and gives you a certain advantage because the team is coherent but unpredictable. This unpredictability is a big advantage against an opponent team. So I would say the strategic aspect is something that, even in the simulation league, is problematic. It is slightly better in the 3D simulation, sorry, it's slightly better in the 2D league. The 2D league has had a lot of strategic progress in the last years. The games look very fast, and it's very difficult to distinguish how they're actually better than they used to be 5 years ago if you watch them. But if you have them play against each other, you see it. Then a team from today will smash a team from 5 years ago. They'll smash them to bits. It's just not very obvious anymore because it has become so intricate to optimize. And the problem is, again, a lot of it is still hand-coded. But I want to make a little meditation at this point because I think it is useful to know what's the best you can do. So I'm going a little bit theory again on a very, very high level field to understand what happens when two agents cooperate. So we're going to look at, and this was exactly the question, what is one mind? I'm going now to look at two agents, and I'm going to allow them to mind meld or not. So I'm going to allow them to do the Spock thing. You know the Spock mind meld? Yeah, he puts a hand on your shoulder or on your brain or whatever, and then melds your mind. That's what we're going to discuss. We have two agents that are being controlled by one brain or not, and see what is the advantage of having one brain. So the scenario we're looking at is very similar to my picture from earlier on. I have to explain briefly. We have one agent that can do an action. We have another agent that can do an action. That action, in this case, they are independent. Selection of actions are independent with respect to state. They see the state and make an action. They see the state, make an action together, happen something in the real world. You can read these arrows as a Bayesian network. So these are random variables, and this is important now because I'm going to do a little bit of information theory. Some of you know that I'm a big fan of using information theory to analyze systems. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to ask how much information these agents actually require to do their optimal strategy. Here we have a case of the mind-melded agent. Basically, it's the same two agents, right? But we now say these actions are done by one brain. This brain does a joint action here. So A is actually A1 and A2 decided by one agent. Okay? Right, so one of the worlds we can look at, and it's not the world I'm going to look at, but this is just to give you an idea. I have these two agents here. They can move north, east, south, west. There are walls here, and there are two target positions. They have to fill the two target positions. Doesn't matter which agent fills which. They can be this way or this way, doesn't matter. But the point is that these agents are obstacles for each other. So this guy goes ahead of this, it stops this from moving. So they somehow have to coordinate. They're not antagonistic, but they become a little bit, they can entangle each other in the way. And you want to minimize the number of time steps you need for the agents to find the target position. Total time step that an agent has to move is basically the cost that you have in the system. So if this agent pays 1 unit per time step, this agent pays 1 unit per time step. That's what you're going to optimize. And now you can ask, for example, the field we're using is actually 1 times 6 field, doesn't matter. The point is this is actually a harder field to handle. So the other field is less expressive. This is actually a more demanding task. And you can ask how much information does the agent need to process about the state to make the decision. And this is for the melded brain, so where one brain controls two agents. And it turns out that essentially you see basically with a melded brain, you see that you can get a higher value for less information. Yeah, the dotted line is the value or the cost, the negative cost of the melded brain. And if you have two independent brains, it goes down in the lower right. So that's the first thing you see. Yes?
How is that calculated?
That's a longer story. It's basically calculated by saying how much information, how much do I need to know about my state to make a decision, and I'm optimizing, I'm asking the minimum amount of information I need to get a particular utility value.
Actions are not the same.
Hmm?
The actions are not the same, so each action cannot require the same amount of information. So
The information measured in Shannon bits in entropy. So it doesn't matter that they are not the same. What you are saying is how many bits basically I have to extract from the environment sensor to send to the actuators. That's how you can think of it. I made a story of 1.5 hour compressed in 2 minutes. So basically I'm asking, it's a kind of cognitive load. How much information do I need to extract about the environment? How much do I need to resolve the environment and make a decision to pick the action? Does it make sense? I'm happy to explain that in more detail later if you're interested. The essential point is, the higher this curve is, the better. The higher means that from less information you get more performance. That's an important point. Yeah? And if you use more information, of course, your performance improves, but not much. You see that here already they're almost the same, and there's not much improvement if you get this extra couple of bits. Yeah? The most important bits are here. Right, so, and here this is an interesting one. This is what you could get out from the environment, and this is what you actually get out from the environment as coordination. What's coordination? Coordination is basically how much the two controllers, the two actions, share information. So how much do they actually depend on each other? And it turns out that if I'm not allowed to take in any information from the environment, 0, of course they cannot share anything with their individual agents. That means I'm blind as an agent, the other one is blind, and so we tap around and the actions are not coordinated. Everyone does their own stuff. The other extreme case is,
Couldn't they at least share their own state? Like they could do some sort of dead reckoning saying, I've moved up, right, left, and I didn't find anything that...
no, they don't do that here. We don't have memory here. Yeah, we could do that, of course. Then you're completely right, we would have more information. You're completely right, yes. You could do that. Yeah. But we don't do that here for simplicity, just to demonstrate the point. Here you have maximum information intake from the environment. And note that it is the coordination of the action is still very low. Yeah, we have 0.2 bits that the actions share. Although we could actually share much more, somewhere above 1 bit. They could share more, but they don't. So there's very little that they need to coordinate to be optimal as individual actions. Surprising, but that's the way it is. It seems that lots of things they can do without watching each other. Yeah? And they're individuals. Now, when you have shared controllers, now that becomes interesting. So you have this brain, this Spockian mind meld. It's one brain controlling 2 agents. And now this is very interesting. The coordination is exactly the opposite here. If you don't know anything about the environment, they are perfectly coordinated. They are share 1 bit. Why is that? Well, what we think is, if you don't know anything about the environment, it's better that you know that you don't get into each other's way. So basically, they are synchronized at the beginning, even if you don't know anything, and they hope that this way they will be optimal in adapting to the target behavior. The interesting point is that this coordination then, goes down, in fact, when you know more about the environment. But then there is the so-called shared coordination, the intrinsic coordination. The intrinsic coordination is how much your 2 brain parts, brain for agent 1, brain for agent 2, talk to each other. And at the beginning, they talk to each other perfectly. They are really sharing everything. And as you see more and more of the environment, actually that goes down. That surprised us a lot, until we understood what it meant. It meant that once you can see your environment, here you basically have full resolution of the environment. Every agent can make the decision on their own. You don't need the mind meld anymore if you know exactly what you're doing. In other words, if you have 2 legs are like 2 agents in a way. If you have perfect feedback, much of your decision can be done locally. You don't need global decisions. Of course, it's not entirely true. Probably for your legs, you sit somewhere here because the legs cannot predict how the upper torso is behaving. Yeah, but if you remove the upper torso, there's nothing there except the 2 legs basically doing their stuff. Then basically they could make a completely local decision without having to share it. It may make sense to think this way. This tells you how to organize your controller. So if you have a little bit of uncertainty about what's out there, it means that part of the decision can be taken locally and part of the decision should be taken globally. In other words, this analysis, and that's why we do that, is telling you something about how to organize your controller. Or depending on how their performance depends on each other. And this is a fundamental analysis. It's not an analysis that's specific to RoboCup or a particular scenario. It's an analysis that in principle you can apply to any type of system. Okay. Now, I think time has come for a few case studies. So how do actually typical multi-agent strategies look like in a RoboCup game? Well, I have an example here. This is actually an example from the Midsize League. That's from the Gambada team. Is Gambada the right way to say it? Sounds cool. Gambada. No, it's Campada or whatever. Anyway, so whatever it's called, this is how a pass looks like in the Midsize team. So essentially you have the player that has a role of passer, it gets this role of passer, another player gets the role of receiver, and basically it sets a pass flag trying to pass. It aligns to the receiver, so if you are a passer, you align to the receiver, then you basically, in parallel, the receiver aligns to the passer, and it has to say, I'm ready. Doesn't say ready, nothing happens. It said, I'm ready. When that happens, then the passer kicks the ball, says, okay, I passed the ball, I'm done, and basically it moves to the next position, it has forgotten everything. and the receiver catches the ball. So here's a nice example. This is the passer, this is the receiver. So it passes the ball, it moves to the next position. This one has received the ball, kicks it back, and so on and so on. And then they score. Here it doesn't pass anymore. There's no further player just to pass to. Very simple. In fact, it is simple like that, but unfortunately in reality it doesn't work that smoothly. So in particular in the simulation league it doesn't. But in the Midsize league it seems still to work like that. Yeah, so it's one way to do it. In particular, the decision when to pass or when to switch to another behavior, when to abort, for example, a pass. If you want to pass and you decide, no, that's not a good idea, abort it. That's a difficult decision to make. Yeah, I have another example for goal defense by the Midsize team. That's actually quite instructive. That's why I picked it. So you have a ball, and you have a goal, and you have a line, and first of all, you put one player on the connection line between ball and goal. As close as possible to the ball that you can, you're allowed to. This is this ball here, this agent there. Two players in the, close to the penalty area. Here you have them. Yeah, that two close to the penalty area. One player near the ball, 45 degrees from the line. This is this player. That player does not interfere in the game. That player has the role of observing. Just telling you, okay, I'm watching the ball. When it starts moving, I'll tell you. Yeah, so it gives the other players information. They can communicate with players, of course. And finally, one player that just blocks the possible progression of the ball. So this player is actually the only player that actually predictively or actively preempts what other players may want to do. All other players are just standard defensive positions or informative positions. This player actually prevents a possible advance of the attacking player. Right. Another approach which I found quite interesting, I want to mention here for completeness to show you there are some systematic approaches to do multi-agent problems, even if they are not still in development. Collaborative defensive positioning. The idea here is by Kirillov and his group. Essentially, they consider defense as a multi-criteria assignment problem. What you want to define is n defenders assignment to m attackers. And basically, the assumption is that one defender per attacker, which is not really true. If you have the attacker, say Messi or Ronaldo or somebody like that, you probably want to assign 2 or 3 to them. But normally it's 1-to-1. And each defender must mark at most one attacker, and you must guarantee that each attacker is marked by no more than one defender. Again, as I say, this is an idealistic assumption. But when you do that, you can do a Pareto optimization, pick the best allocation of defenders and attackers, and basically give an evaluation of the success of your assignment based on the time you need to execute an action. What is executing the action? Going there, kicking the ball, passing whatever, and preventing a threat by an attacker. Yeah, preventing a threat is not necessarily handling the ball, of course. Preventing a threat is more complicated because you have to know what the attacker may be doing and you have to preempt that. Okay, this is just a program that's used here. But of course, as I said, this is an approach that has a disadvantage. If you have outnumbered defenders, you should not mark a specific attacker, of course, unless it's very strong. What you rather want to do is to make the life of the attacker as difficult as possible. You want to make it really, really difficult for them to attack your goal. And sometimes it works, and usually if the attacker, there are more attackers than defenders, usually the attackers have a better position because they control the ball. They can decide where the ball is going to be in the next second. If you have outnumbered attackers, then of course you have a good position. You want to mark attackers, and then you want to have somebody that also perhaps marks a strong attacker or stops them from moving on. And basically what you do, you try to put them in pressure so that the attackers are going to lose the ball. That's what you want to do. Yeah, you don't even care about having the ball. What you want them to lose the ball. Because once the attacker loses the ball, you can start working from there. Yeah, that's everything. A defender is a destructive character. Yeah, so a defender must be destructive. That's what their job is. Okay, I want to finally, well, the tiny final, I have one or two more things to say after that. I want to give an idea how does our team work, so that you have a feeling. This is probably a third or a fourth of the whole overview of what we're doing, but some salient points which are nice to know, to get a feeling how it looks like to develop a team. And this is for the 3D league, so these are humanoids, okay? It's not a 2D strategy, it's actually 3D strategies, humanoid strategy. So we have different formations depending on the game situation. Game situation can be attack or defense. Attack means the ball is in the opponent field, defense is in our part of the field, and you switch between these two positions. We are, for example, trying to get two players around the ball. So one is close to the ball, the other one is a supporter, that we always try to do that. Another thing that we do, our coordination is essentially visual. Yeah, we don't do much talking. We have a silent but strong team. Sorry, silent team. Except for the goalie. The goalie talks a bit. The goalie is the one who decides roles. One problem with role allocation is jitter, right? I say, I'm becoming defender, I'm becoming left forward, I'm becoming defender, I'm becoming left forward. It can happen to you. This jitter is something you need to stop. And it's tricky sometimes. Yeah, so you have to prevent this jitter. And therefore, the decision of roles is actually done by the goalie. So there's one brain here, not multiple brains, one brain, and he makes all the decisions. And he basically sees, okay, this position has become free, we do not have a left forward, so we have to allocate one. Yeah, who's the closest, you go. Of course, there's a priority, left forward will not be filled if the guy is currently acting something else. Yes.
So doesn't the goalie then must have all the information about?
He sees the most of the field.
Okay, but for instance, if he doesn't have enough information to decide the roles, what do you do?
In our case, usually it has. Otherwise, it's just silent. Every player knows what they are doing. Anyway.
He gets information from the other players?
I don't know whether we do that actually. But you see quite well in the simulation league.
The simulation league is like the one with the nuts, right? Where you simulate nuts.
Yeah.
And we get 10 players, I guess, on the team or something. How many players?
We have 11.
Okay, 11. So I don't know. For instance, in our field, the goalie has no way to see all
Yes.
the information, have all the information from the field.
Then you need actually to find a way of communicating that, or somebody else has to make the decision, like the quarterback, the field or something. Yeah. So somebody has to make this decision. You could, for example, split the decision. So goalie has competence over part of the players and the midfielder over another part, for example. It will be a way. The problem is when the midfielder is out of the game, like the pickup or something, then you have a problem.
Well, you just switch dynamically with the cup, right?
Yes, you could do that. You could do that. Yeah, we have anti-crowding rules. We are very good at that. This is one of our strengths, in fact. Most people get their players kicked out because of crowding. There's an anti-crowding rule in the simulation league, and our players are very strictly adamant that rather not go into a group rather than removed outside. They say the cost of getting removed outside and walking back into the field is much higher than not being close at the center of action. Yeah, so we almost never get removed for crowding. And we have the jitter suppression actually works okay in our team. So if you have two players going to the ball and there's noise, there's a possibility of jitter. So this guy goes, this guy goes, this guy goes, this is the. It's not never clear who's the closest to the ball. But the way we do it is actually both go, and one decides to really go and says, I'm going no matter what. And that basically breaks the symmetry. So they go, and at some point one player makes a decision, the other one then goes away and stays supporting. We have around the ball one or two positions fixed to it, supporting players, and also the ball and field equilibrium. So where are you in the field, where's the ball in the field, and you make a spring type model where the players should go. One thing which is also quite nice, I'm not going to tell you all the details about that, but we have a mechanism for predicting the opponent's behavior, which is trying to harass him. Yeah, trying to put obstacles in his way. We try to disturb them what they're going to do. And we seem to be quite good at that. It's, some players have, some teams have complained about that. Like, you stand always in the way. So I consider that a compliment. But the point is here predicting opponent's behavior. So you try to predict what the opponent is doing, and if you do that right, you can actually perturb what they're going to do. I mean, you don't disturb them if they want to retreat. So they can go back, who cares, right? But if they want to attack you, yes, you send them away. We have, of course, dribble, attack, and pass. And one thing, of course, that we have is a panic kick. A panic kick is activated when the ball is near you. But then you notice that there are too many players around you of the opponent that you cannot control the ball for much longer. That you rather get the ball away from you fast than have them have it. Yeah, that is one thing that you really don't want. Okay, so this is a little bit of an insight of how our team works. And every team has their own specialties. Some teams have a very strong walk. I think the Notwithstanding has a very strong walk and a couple of other really neat properties. Austin Villa has this type of walk. I must say that the winning teams in the 3D league have not a plausible walk. It's not a walk that you can actually use in robots. It will break the robots. Yeah, it's not feasible. So that's something that is being under consideration to change in the simulator in the future. I want to talk a little bit about influence at the end. So how do you position your players? And there are a lot of interesting ways of doing that. So the question is, who gets the ball? You have two players. I'm now talking kind of a 2D type scenario, but essentially in 3D is not much different. It's just a little bit more elaborate, or actually a lot more elaborate, but to get the idea. Some of the things you may know, but there may be some interesting things for you also. So I have the motto, when you've got the ball, there are hearts and minds will follow. So everything hinges around the ball, that's what you want. If so you recognize the quote, please don't tell me that you know the original. I know the original, I didn't want to say it here, because it's a little bit ruder. So the simplest case is the following. We have two agents. They move immediately, without delay, and they have the same speed. So who's getting this ball here? Well, it's pretty obvious this one is going to get it. Okay, that's clear. Now we can ask, what is the area of the world where a ball that does not move is going to be caught by such agents? It's very clear that you have to see what are the points that have distance closer to this, distance closer to this, and equal distance. Equal distance, of course, is the middle perpendicular between the two players. It's pretty obvious. This is what I indicated here. Now I have more players, and if I have more players, then we have the well-known Voronoi construction. Who has not heard about the Voronoi construction? Okay, the Voronoi construction basically takes for every dot here all the points in the area which are closer to it than to anybody else. So basically what you do is you construct the middle perpendiculars between all points, and then you cut off the parts that are not relevant. So for example, this middle perpendicular between these two points is here, but there is this one, so it stops here. It stops basically when you reaches the middle perpendicular between these two. This construction is enormously useful. Voronoi constructions are super useful. And there's also the dual. The dual says, I'm connecting two players which have a joint boundary. So if they have a joint boundary, I'm connecting them. This gives us a graph, the so-called Delaunay graph. In fact, the 2D League has a formation editor that is based on the Delaunay graph. And I tried to get this editor. The problem is that I could not get the explanations how it works, so I could not make it real for your exercise. But if you're interested to have a look at it at some point, it's called fedit2. And you could look it up at another time. Hidehisa Akiyama, who's the author of that, has promised me that he's going to write a little manual, and at that moment that will be easier. Anyway, so they use basically Voronoi decompositions to do that. However, I'd like to mention the fact that, of course, players need time to move somewhere. So, for example, you have a movement, you need time to turn around. That, the distance depends also on the angle you have to turn, particularly if you're a humanoid, it takes time for you to turn. And the more you have to turn, the more time it takes. Let me skip that. I want to show something else. If the ball moves, it's it becomes even more complicated. So you can see here, there's a player here. If you can't see it, you're good. Your eyes are good. 2020. So this player here, 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 here. Here you see this is a Voronoi decomposition, except that the ball is moving in that direction. Okay? So it asks if the ball is moving in that direction, which area of the field is going to be yours. So it means if the ball is here, moving in that direction, this one is going to catch it. Here, moving in that direction, this is going to catch it. In this area, this player has an advantage because the Voronoi cell has been basically bent into this direction. This is a hyperbola. And here it will go to the goal, here it will go into the out. I think it's a good opportunity to actually run the code. I have this little code. Yes? And this code is actually available for you for the practical. Is it under user local sock? I call it the banalizator. So you can put here an agent. So the blue area is where you will catch the ball. For a non-moving ball, this is a ball, it does not move. Dark means it will take more time. Bright blue means it will very quick. So I can now move the ball, and you see that now the ball is moving in this direction with very high speed. You see in this area will fall into the goal, here will go out, green means out. And this is the area where blue will catch it. Now watch closely. And make it slower perhaps to show you something. You see when it's slow, then the influence area grows. It doesn't grow, but it goes more to the left. You see that this goes to the left because you have more, you get it faster from this direction, but here you will take more time because this runs away. And here it's even faster. And now it's now the ball is moving with super light speed. Not super light, but it's moving faster than the player can run. And when you watch closely, you see essentially, this is essentially the cone of in the speed of sound. Cherenkov, exactly, it's the Cherenkov cone. Basically tells you, in this area, I can catch the ball very fast from the front. So the ball is coming here, it's very fast. I can catch it by going towards it. But in this area, if it's outside of this cone, I cannot catch it. I have to run after it. It will take a lot of time to catch it. Black means it takes more than, I think, 30 steps to catch it. Here, I will catch it, but it will take time. So if it's outside of this cone, it means I have to actually run after the ball. I will not catch it immediately. If it's here, I can catch it from the front, and here it's just a normal catch. Okay? So you can see immediately how the players are going to look like. And you see for the whole world, don't worry, it does a successive refinement if you basically run. And this software is something you can try out basically on the practical. And you see, this is the influence area if the ball is moving in this direction. You know exactly which player is going to get what. It's of course assuming that the players move instantaneously and with the same speed. And there's another map you can look at which is quite nice. This is the speed map. The speed map tells you if the ball is in the center and you move in different velocities. This is basically the dual. It's basically the conjugate space. It tells you in which direction who will catch it. So if the ball will move in this direction, the blue guys will catch it. If the ball moves in this direction, different speeds, the red guys will catch it. And so if I move the ball, I can't do that. Then this one has changed. You see? You see that in this speed it will get to the out here with the red will catch it, here the blue will catch it.
And black basically nobody moves.
That means it will take more than 30 steps to catch it. Exactly. You can set actually the parameter in the software. There's a minus -8 for age. Yeah, you can change the player on the prompt and see how it changes. It usually very, very long. Basically, every point catches it, but it's not very meaningful because there are so many uncertainties in the system that it's not really expressive. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show. And finally, I'd like to make a little suggestion for another thing that you can consider doing. This is a kind of minimax passing optimization. So if you have a team, say white, and a team black, you can ask yourself, how valuable is it to do a certain pass? Or how valuable is a particular position in a way? And basically, you set the goal position. The goal is like a dummy player. If it's your opponent's goal, you give it the value of 1. If it's your own goal, it's a value of -1. And now you say the value of getting the ball at position I, at player I, it doesn't take into account the speed of the player, is the best you can do in passing away from I to its neighbors, yeah, J, to a friendly neighbor. So white to white, 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 or white, yeah, not to black, of course. So you look at the friendly neighbors, multiply by the probability that you get there successfully, times the value of this friendly player, plus the counter probability, and here for simplicity you can make it a bit more elaborate. For simplicity you assume that the closest opponent catches it. So J hat means is the most likely opponent that catches it if you shoot it to J hat. So for example, if you shoot it to this white guy, you can say this black player here is going to catch it, that's your J hat, and it has a value, and of course this value will be much lower because this one will try to send it back into your side. So this is going to be closer to negative, this is going to be closer to positive, and you take this average and maximize it, and if I is a friend, that's your value, and if it's I is a foe, then you minimize it, and you can iterate that, and that gives you an idea of what passes are a good thing to do. Well, this is kind of an idea of how you can use reinforcement type learning, the dynamic programming type thinking to optimize multi-agent behavior. And with this, I would like to conclude my talk, and if you have questions, I'm still around today. And of course, we'll have the practical in a second, and I would be happy to join you there again. Thank you very much.
So with regards to your system, how do you think special cases or situations and then building them bottom up, those skills and combining them, how important is it? Like I know Peter Stone is doing a lot of work on 3 versus 2 keep away and those kind of set double pass plays that you end up having in software quite.
Yes, I was thinking about mentioning keep away. However, what keep away does, keep away is a very useful tool if you want to have an excellent benchmark for machine learning. So we actually use keep away, Peter Stone's keep away model for machine learning. The problem with that is that in reality what happens is it's never clear who the participants are. So in other words, the decomposition is the challenge, not actually the carrying out of the particular skill at that moment. So that's our experience. In other words, yes, you can train to do this keep away thing, but the actual difficulty is to combine that into a coherent strategy. It's more difficult actually than the individual skill. There are lots of good solutions for that. I mean, Martin Riedmiller has some really fantastic learning strategies, and the keep away I can really recommend. It's a really good benchmark. It's easy to set up and it's consistent, and many people use it. Yeah, but in terms of multi-agent optimization, it is the problem is it's not really scaling at this point. So you really have to, and at the end of the day.
But my question was not so much about keep away, but the fact that you have these kind of skills and then build a hierarchy of those and somehow make your team play soccer.
Building the hierarchy of skills is a major drive I have. So I have a major drive that we do not have actually a coherent solution for that. There are lots of coherent solutions for, filtering, Kalman filters, extracting data, reinforcement learning of small skill sets. To my understanding, there is no coherent model how you would actually put together a set of skills towards a coherent gameplay. Much of it is still simple, very smart guys sitting at the computer and coding. Does it answer your question? Yeah, Martin has done some work in that direction, but I'm not sure how consistent. He once said to me that many of the fine-tuning of this collaboration of the different skills still has to be done by people who understand what they're doing.
I have a question about how you implement your controller. So do you have a state machine also inside, or do you have another technique to just get this? Because this complex behavior.
Yes, there are different ways of doing that. We have a decision tree basically. So there's basically a behavior tree. You say, I have this behavior. It says, are the conditions met for this behavior? And then it fires the next one. I have this sub-behavior, say I want to pass. In the past you have other conditions met, for example, I have a free space around me, there's another partner that I can keep to, so initialize pass. So the first part of the behavior is position yourself to the ball. The other part is where's your opponent. The third part is prepare kick and so on, and then the fire, it's hierarchically goes up.
So how often do you recalculate this tree, or
all the time?
All the time, because
it's very fast.
No, that's not what I'm concerned about. It's more like when you're so that you just jump between two behaviors, because yeah, that's really a problem when you just decide.
That's a very good point. The jittering is one of the major things you have to prevent. So one way to prevent it is if you choose your parameters right, then you basically stay in the tree for the time being. Sometimes you have to exclude jumping by hand. Another trick that's sometimes being used is to put a kind of cost. So once you make a decision, you say, I'm committed to this decision, at least for a certain time. Yeah, so you put in, basically, the decision you make gets an extra utility that decays over time. So by this you can make it like it has hysteresis. You stay in this decision. So you need a really big counter value somewhere else, like, oh, there's a goal imminent to override that. That's also possible. Yeah? But I completely agree, this is a problem. In fact, even in humans it's a problem. Even in humans it's a problem. Breaking symmetries is not always easy. Imagine the kid standing at the, you're buying stuff and does it take the Smarties, does it take the Haribos? Of course in Bonn it's obvious, but so which one? Decide which one do you want, and then you stay there for 2 minutes and there's no decision. It doesn't happen. Okay? Good. You had a question?
Yeah, you said that this behavior to play still is hardcoded. What you're going to do? And have you ever been inspired like with video games like FIFA, or because this is also down there, this computer player behavior?
Well, we learned some things. Our walk, for example, is evolved. Yeah, we evolved the walk. Yeah, we did something that roboticists cannot do when we do hardware. We did 100,000 runs and tested which walk will run best, less compromised between walk. So that's something that's learned. But in FIFA, well, nobody knows how it works internally. Right? Nobody.
Yeah.
And plus, don't forget one thing, FIFA is designed to be fun to play. It's not designed to be realistic. Yeah, so FIFA will give you, for example, I never played FIFA, but I assume all I know about computer games is that they will try to make the game sufficiently easy for you to work. I remember that we once played in 2001 a game, manual game on the GPD against fixed RoboCup team as humans, and that was hard. It was much harder than playing the FIFA game because it's simply not designed to be easy to play. Yeah, they just smash us to bits, these robots. Yeah. You're completely right. I mean, that you should be inspired by real games. I would be inspired by observing real soccer games, yes. But we are not there yet. In fact, The 2D league is probably closest to look like a real soccer game, except for the third dimension. Yeah, very fast, very tactical. They actually introduced also diversions. So you have teams that actually go on diversion. So the other team needs things that they will attack from there, then they attack from the other side. So they do really complicated maneuvers by now. In fact, I would really recommend, if you go to the next competition, you want to learn about multi-agents, watch the 2D and have yourself explain what they're doing. Some of these teams have really fantastic strategies. Yeah.
But are those strategies actually emergent, or are they part of it?
Very little is emergent. As I say, this is my major gripe. It is not a solved problem. I want to make clear, that's why I try to give you balance between things that we understand, like computational hard models like this information sharing thing, or some other things, and really the dark rules that are in this use in this league. The main problem is that, notwithstanding what papers are written about this topic, much of this is a dark art, because you do not have, I would say, if we would have a team that can learn to play football, RoboCup, bottom up, even if it's not great, if it's not winning all competitions, but playing solid, I would consider that a success. Because much of the successes are just Russian kick, Russian kick, Russian kick. This is the easy success that you can get, and after that it comes difficult. Positioning yourself, for example, is very difficult. Positioning yourself is usually a lot of knowledge. And with the Voronoi modeling, it has improved. So there's lots of stuff where you can make nice, coherent Voronoi cell modeling, and that gives you a lot of good behavior for free. But there is not a consistent way of actually getting these behaviors bottom up. The problem is not solved yet. Yeah.
First, are you allowed to have memory in datas? Because okay. So do you use memory, or
in the RoboCup, yes.
okay?
Yeah, the model that I showed was just a very abstract model to compute it. We did not have memory, so that was the question that Jackie had. But of course in RoboCup we are allowed to use memory.
And how much of the field do you actually see what
The 2D sees quite a lot, and also the 3D sees quite well. So the vision is much easier than in the hardware.
Okay, so you don't have full view.
No, it's not deterministic, and you don't see everything, you don't see things behind you.
Okay.
You have to turn your head if you want to see things behind you. But there is no obstacle to view. So if the robot stands in front of another one, you see through it. Yeah? So that's one thing that's easier in the 3D league. Yes?
You show the analysis of 2D players and ball movements and respective agent movements of the opponent team.
Yeah.
How could you maybe incorporate that in an agent, or take some advantage by realizing, okay, the agent or the opponents have these capabilities, or usually use that capability, and I have different capabilities. I mean,
which slide do you mean?
On the very beginning, where you map it on the 2D
yes.
surface.
Well, you could use it to model your Voronoi cells. I mean, I have made a very simple diagram, but of course Voronoi cells will look differently if you have orientations of players. So if you have a player looking this way, and it's a humanoid, it really needs time to turn around to the other side. It means that, assuming that it needs to turn around, your Voronoi cell will be much smaller in that direction. Yeah, so basically, if Voronoi cell assumes that it's a circular growth. But if it's backwards, it's not circular, it will more look like an apple that grows out, or like a cherry that grows out to the front, but only slowly to the back. And then your Voronoi cell diagram will look quite different. You can take advantage of that.
Yeah, but I thought if you can analyze, okay, the opponent is more dribbling and is more successful than I am in it, or something like that, how could you maybe get something out of that during the game?
Yes, you could get something out during the game, but saying, if you know that the opponent is better in dribbling, all you need to do is prevent this guy from getting to dribble.
So it can adjust some parameters maybe on, on the fly by watching the other team playing?
I'm sure you can. The main problem that you have is how to react to it properly. You see, the big problem in multi-agent systems is they are so finely tuned against each other that once you change something, suddenly your whole team doesn't play well anymore. Yeah? For example, you change some parameter on how you move forward. Then your whole attack strategy doesn't work anymore. Suddenly, the whole team performs badly. Yeah? It doesn't have to be like that, but there's a danger of that. So what you want in a multi-agent system is actually that the individual agents can react flexibly to, or gracefully rather, to when the other player changes something. So for example, if the opponent has this really fantastic dribble, and you know, okay, well, I have to prevent him from dribbling. So I topple him, I do whatever I can do. I change my behavior, then your other players should not be confused by that. They should understand, okay, we're now changing our behavior. Also, the experience with the pickup teams shows that teams seem to be surprisingly resilient to that. Remember the pickup?
Drop-in challenge. I think. Pickup drop-in challenge.
Drop-in challenge. The drop-in challenge. In the drop-in challenge, what they did, that was a competition they mixed teams, players from different teams together and had them play. And the surprising thing is, it actually works.
In our lesbian competition, RoboCup that wasn't really prepared, was not making much of a games participate in
No? Oh, okay.
the SPL in our
Already?
the team, they were basically playing our they weren't
Yeah, our clubs are also
Yes. All right. In any case, I saw like I didn't see that much resilience.
Okay, may it depend. There has to be depend on the maturity of the league in terms of strategy. Of course, the strategy in the 3D league is already, it's not great, it's not like in the 2D league, but it's already quite good. And that seems to work well. I have no idea whether it will work in the 2D league, which is highly specialized. So in the 2D league, any mistake will be exploited immediately. So I suspect that the 2D league again will be not work. So in other words, I believe that it will not work when you're very, very badly organized. I expect that it will work well when you're moderately well organized, and I expect it will work badly again when you're too well organized. Because then mixing strategies like, why didn't you pick that up? I said, well, I'm not doing that usually, what do you want to do? Right? So that's why superstars playing together in a team are so difficult to manage, because you basically have to tell them to adapt to each other. Yeah, does that answer your question?
No.
I think Jackie had a question.
Yeah, I had a question. Since you already have, or since this year you have a kit-size humanoid team as well, how much interaction is there between your simulation guys and the actual robots?
They are the same people, so the interaction happens via shared brain. Yes, I would say right now we are handling something that we did not have to handle in the simulation league at all, namely vision. So vision was one thing that cost us a lot of effort this year. However, the good news is what we have actually transferred from the simulation league is our understanding how to organize software. In fact, much of the software, the structure that we are using in the 3D, in the Midsize league is actually inspired by how we organize our 3D team. So the main messages right now at this point are more on the software engineering level. And my hope is, of course, that within the next time, of course, we will be able to handle some of the more intricate behaviors. So passing, I would say passing and dribbling is probably something that will be feasible to transfer our know-how. Will be not code, invariant code. I don't think it will be invariant code, but I think it will be invariant ideas. Does it answer?
Yeah.
We also will not put an effort on trying to maintain the same code. I think at this point it's not something we think is going to work well. I mean, some teams have very good success actually in having basically the same code base for the physiques, say SPL and 3D Humanoid. Right now we have not made the decision yet. Right now our policy is we probably will maintain two code bases which are similar in philosophy but not identical. Yes?
How much like computational resources are you allowed to have in the 2D or 3D? Because I assume there is some upper bound.
Yeah, the upper bound is essentially the thinking time. So thinking time right now is
20 milliseconds.
how much?
20 milliseconds. The 3D simulation runs in 50 Hertz. You have typically an up-to-date i7 machine for all of your 11 agents. So if you don't answer in time, you continue the movement and do weird stuff.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so usually that's not a problem. At least in our team, thinking time has never been a problem. Therefore, say if you want to calculate this thing here, fully, then you're going to have a problem. So if you run this is very expensive. Basically, this looks neat, this little program, but it is essentially computed for every pixel on the screen. It's really expensive. Yeah. So let's put it this way: we have thought of ways of making that a bit faster and more simple and minimal. And one trick that you see, actually, you can see when I'm clicking on it. You can notice that it's coarser because it computes first the big out for several of the points and it answers fast. Then when you let it piece it for a few seconds, it refines it. So that's how we do that. You can't run something like that on the agents, okay? That's too expensive. You have to simplify it. But I mean, this is really general. So if you have some other movement model, you can use this other movement model. It will still work. Yeah, the movement model that takes into account directionality or orientation of the player, speed of the player, stamina, blah blah, whatever. Stamina is something that exists in the league. I don't think that any other league has that. It basically is a measure of how fast and how much you can expend more energy. So in the run, you run a lot, then you walk like that, and that does not happen to real robots. They either die outright or they continue. But in the 2D league, it exists.
So I guess we should continue the discussion in the coffee break, and afterwards you prepared an exercise, right?
Yeah.
So thank you again, Daniel.